Imagine American television without M*A*S*H. It's tough, right? That's because the show wasn't just popular. It completely reshaped what a sitcom could be. Premiering in 1972 during the final years of the Vietnam War, MASH was set during the Korean War and blended humor with heartbreak in a way television audiences had never truly experienced before. Its quirky yet deeply human characters explored the absurdity of war while also highlighting the resilience of the human spirit. Very quickly, the show became a fan favorite and evolved into something much larger than a simple comedy series. But while audiences laughed and cried with the doctors and nurses of the 4077th, behind the scenes the show itself was constantly changing. As the writers pushed deeper into social commentary and emotionally complex storytelling, tensions occasionally rose among the cast. Several beloved stars eventually made the difficult choice to leave the series. Were those exits personal, professional, or fueled by creative conflicts? The real answers are more complicated than many fans realize. To understand why these departures happened, we first need to go back to the beginning and explore how MASH became one of the most influential television series in history. There's a lot to unpack with this story. But before diving into the cast exits and behind-the-scenes drama, it's important to rewind the clock and look at how this legendary series first came to life. Like many timeless television classics, the origins of MAS*H did not begin on television at all. Instead, the story started in literature. In 1968, Dr. Richard Hooker, the pen name of Korean War surgeon Richard Hornberger, published the novel MASH, a novel about 3 Army doctors. The book drew heavily from Hornberger's own experiences serving as a doctor in a mobile Army surgical hospital during the Korean War. What made the novel stand out was its unusual balance of dark humor, painful realism, emotional honesty, and moments of genuine warmth. Readers connected deeply with its cynical but compassionate portrayal of war, and before long the novel became a bestseller. Naturally, Hollywood took notice. Only 2 years later, acclaimed director Robert Altman adapted the novel into the 1970 film MASH. The film leaned heavily into satire and black comedy, delivering an irreverent but sobering look at military life. It starred Donald Sutherland as Hawkeye Pierce and Elliot Gould as Trapper John. At a time when America was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, the film struck a nerve with audiences. Its anti-authoritarian tone and dark comedic edge resonated strongly with viewers who were already questioning the realities of war and government. The movie became both a critical and commercial success, eventually winning the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival and an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. But despite the film's success, nobody could have predicted the cultural phenomenon that would emerge when the story made the leap to television. In 1972, CBS adapted the concept into a weekly television series developed by Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds. The show premiered on September 17, 1972, and while it retained the wartime setting and irreverent humor of the film, the television version introduced something entirely new. Unlike most sitcoms of the era, MAS*H adopted a more serialized and character-driven format. Episodes didn't simply reset after every laugh. Characters evolved, relationships deepened, and emotional consequences carried over from one story to the next. That change allowed the series to explore themes of trauma, morality, loss, and survival with a depth rarely seen on television comedy at the time. Into the role of Hawkeye Pierce stepped Alan Alda, whose performance quickly became the emotional center of the series. Alda brought charm, wit, intelligence, and vulnerability to the character, helping transform Hawkeye into one of television's most beloved protagonists. Still, the show's beginning was surprisingly shaky. During its first season, ratings were disappointing, and CBS seriously considered canceling the series altogether. Fortunately, the network decided to move the show to Saturday nights, and that decision changed everything. Viewership exploded, word of mouth spread rapidly, and MAS*H soon became one of the most talked-about programs on television. Part of what made the series revolutionary was its willingness to break traditional sitcom rules. The show experimented constantly with format and tone. It used real war footage, tackled political and social issues directly, and often abandoned the comforting rhythms audiences expected from comedy television. One of its most famous innovations was minimizing the use of a laugh track. In fact, The producers refused to include canned laughter during operating room scenes, believing it would undermine the seriousness of material. Instead, audiences often heard the sound of helicopters, medical equipment, and battlefield chaos. Those choices gave the show a realism that felt groundbreaking at the time. As the years passed, Alan Alda's influence behind the scenes grew considerably. Beyond starring as Hawkeye, he became a writer, director, and major creative force within the series. Alda pushed the show toward more emotional storytelling and greater realism, believing the comedy worked best when grounded in authentic human experiences. Many viewers appreciated the deeper, more reflective tone the show developed over time, but not everyone involved felt the same way. Some cast members believed their roles were gradually shrinking as Hawkeye became more central to the narrative. Others worried certain characters were turning into exaggerated caricatures rather than fully developed people. Combined with the pressures of fame, long filming schedules, and creative disagreements, these tensions eventually contributed to several major departures from the cast. Over its remarkable 11-season run, MASH experienced numerous cast changes, yet the series always remained focused on one central mission, showing the human cost of war through compassion, humor, heartbreak, and friendship. Even as actors came and went, the emotional core of the show endured. But among all the departures in MASH history, perhaps none was more shocking than the first major exit, the departure of McLean Stevenson. For longtime fans, one moment still stands above the rest as the most devastating scene in the show's history. It came at the very end of the Season 3 finale, the unforgettable episode Abyssinia Henry. For most of the episode, audiences believed they were watching a happy farewell. Colonel Henry Blake had finally received his discharge papers and was preparing to return home to his family. There were smiles, celebrations, hugs, and emotional goodbyes. Everything seemed hopeful. Then, in the final moments, Radar O'Reilly quietly entered the operating room while the doctors were in the middle of surgery. Holding back emotion, he delivered the line that stunned America. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. The silence that followed was unlike anything television audiences had experienced before. No dramatic music played. No laugh track interrupted the moment. The camera simply lingered on the shocked faces of the characters as the sounds of surgery continued in the background. It was raw, sudden, and painfully real. That single scene changed television history forever. It marked one of the first times a beloved sitcom character had been killed off permanently and without warning. But the real story behind that moment began long before the cameras rolled. McLean Stevenson had been a crucial part of MAS*H from the very beginning. As Colonel Henry Blake, he played the lovable but often overwhelmed commanding officer of the 4077th. Henry wasn't a perfect leader. He was frequently confused, frazzled, and desperate to maintain order amid total chaos. Yet that humanity made him incredibly relatable. While Hawkeye and Trapper brought rebellion and sarcasm to the show, Henry brought warmth and emotional grounding. Fans adored him, and Stevenson's performance earned widespread praise, including a Golden Globe Award. Behind the scenes, however, Stevenson was becoming increasingly frustrated. According to various cast interviews and memoirs, the actor felt his role was gradually being overshadowed as the series focused more heavily on Alan Alda's Hawkeye. As Alda's creative influence expanded, Hawkeye became the emotional centerpiece of more storylines, and Stevenson worried that Colonel Blake was losing importance within the ensemble. In a 1975 interview with People magazine, Stevenson openly admitted his ambitions, saying, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show." To some people, that statement sounded egotistical, but Stevenson's frustrations were rooted in something deeper than simple vanity. Like many actors in Hollywood, he feared becoming trapped in a single role forever. Television success can be both a blessing and a prison, and Stevenson believed he had the charisma and talent to lead a series of his own. He wanted the chance to prove himself outside the shadow of MAS*H. So at the end of Season 3, he informed producers that he would not be returning. Ordinarily, sitcom characters who left shows were written out gently. They moved away, accepted another job, or disappeared with minimal explanation. But MAS*H had never been a traditional sitcom. Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds saw Stevenson's departure as an opportunity to remind audiences of something essential. This was still a war story. In war, not everyone gets to come home safely. That philosophy inspired the shocking conclusion of Abyssinia, Henry. Only a handful of people knew about the ending before filming. Alan Alda later revealed that Gary Berghoff, who played Radar, was one of the few actors informed in advance, so he could prepare emotionally. Most of the cast heard the news for the first time while cameras were rolling, meaning their stunned reactions were genuine. That authenticity gave the scene extraordinary emotional power. When the episode aired, audiences were overwhelmed. CBS reportedly received thousands of letters from viewers. Many praised the show for its honesty and courage, while others were furious that such a beloved character had been killed so suddenly. Some fans even accused the producers of going too far. Yet the creators stood by their decision. Larry Gelbart later explained that the goal was simple: to remind viewers that war is unpredictable and merciless. Sometimes people survive, and sometimes they do not. As for McLean Stevenson himself, leaving MAS*H initially appeared to be a smart career move. NBC signed him to a lucrative deal, eager to capitalize on his popularity. He starred in the McLean Stevenson Show, a sitcom designed around his affable personality. At first, it seemed Stevenson might successfully transition into leading man status. Unfortunately, the momentum didn't last. The show was canceled after only one season. A second attempt to lull Larry performed even worse critically and eventually became something of an industry punchline. Years later, Stevenson openly admitted regretting his decision to leave MASH. In a 1983 interview with the Los Angeles Times, he reflected sadly, saying, "I took myself out of the game." Over time, he realized that MASH had been a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The chemistry among the cast, the quality of the writing, and the emotional connection with audiences simply could not be replicated elsewhere.